Hey everyone, welcome back to this next edition in Healthy You. And so, moms and dads, in this episode or this module, what we're going to dig into deeply is we're going to start digging heavily into vitamins and minerals. And we're going to talk about it from two perspectives. We're going to talk about what they do and what are the best ways for us to go and get those vitamins and minerals. And so we're going to talk first and foremost about what the vitamins and the minerals, what their functions are in the body, things they regulate, things they control. But we're also going to talk about sourcing because, a lot of times when people start thinking about, vitamins and minerals, they think, well, the only way for me to get them is to get them from supplements. And that's really quite far from true, right? Supplements, as we mentioned in prior modules, should really and truly only be utilized as a gap fill. If we understand that there's certain foods that are super nutrient dense, and we start building our diet so that we have an anti-inflammatory framework, and we start working these nutrient dense foods, whether it's meats, whether it's vegetables, whether it's fruits, whether it's spices, whatever it might be, when they become staples into our diet, it makes it far easier for us to be able to balance our diets out, but also at the same time, it makes it far easier for us to know where we might have holes. And so in this module, we're going to start digging into folate. And folate's one where you hear lots about folate, but not a lot of people really understand why we should take folate. And even fewer people really understand what the best sources are. So I'm going to go into our slide deck here so we can start looking at this. And we start really digging into understanding, what are they and how much should I take? And so as we dig in here into the slides, let's take a look here first and foremost at what folate does. So folate, also called folic acid, there's a number of different variances in the amount of folic acid. So general recommendation, and this information is per the National Institute of Health. So these are their standard recommendations of about 400 micrograms per day. Folate is very important for a number of different things. It's very important for proper gene expression, cell division, and the production of red blood cells. It can be very hard to convert. So some people can handle folic acid, folate. Other people may have to transition into things like methylfolate. Obviously, the best way to go and get folate into your body is to take it in through food sources. But some people, just because maybe we have a difficult time with keeping a balanced diet, it may be essential, especially if you are of childbearing years and you're trying to get pregnant. It becomes really important to have sufficient folate because we do want to prevent things like neural tube defects. And so folic acid is one that is well known, and you'll see this a lot in even if you're talking to your OBs, that you should make sure that you're taking folic acid if you are of childbearing years because it is so critical in gene expression. And let's step back and revisit a term that we talked about before called epigenetics. So things like these types of nutrients, when we talk about the environment around the genes dictating how the genes express, this is why things like folic acid become so important. If we're deficient in folic acid, it alters gene expression, the way that the genes are read and written. It can change the way that our cells divide. It can change the way that we produce blood cells because the environment that is being created in our body will change the way that our body works and functions at the most basic of levels. So having proper levels of folic acid / folate helps to make sure that we have proper gene expression, reducing the likelihood of neural tube defects, helping with normal cell division. So let's move on here and take a look at some of the foods that tend to be the most dense. Obviously, as we talked about, natural folate is better than folic acid. And the best sources, and you're going to see this one here quite a bit, beef liver is a mega source of so many different types of nutrients. Now, let me put the caveat. Beef liver from the industrially raised, high production farms, forget it. Even if it's dense in these things, as well as a bunch of other nutrients, there are so many negatives that come with it because the liver is a filtering station. And so remember that if there's chemicals put into the liver of the animal when it's alive, when you get it as meat, you're going to have all of those nasty chemicals, antibiotics, all those things still jamming up the liver. So we don't want to go and take this type of meat product in, this organ meat in, if it's not from an animal that was raised in a way that makes sense, organically raised on a natural diet, things like that. It really and truly makes a huge difference. But there's a lot of other great things that you can get it from, right? You can get it from spinach, you can get it from black-eyed peas, you can get it from asparagus, you can get it from Brussels sprouts. These foods are extremely dense. So it's not hard to get adequate amounts of folic acid if you just eat a very rich diet in greens, because they're so loaded with it. And although it can be highly bioavailable, it can oftentimes be difficult to utilize. So it's important that we try and get it from the food sources as often as possible, so that it comes in the form that's easiest for our body to assimilate it. Because whenever you look at something that's a synthetic, it's not bound in a way that your body is used to it. Your body really wants to assimilate all of your vitamins and minerals in the form of food. It's the way that our body was designed. All things are better absorbed when they come bundled in food. And so you see on this list some ones that are very nutrient dense. But one of the things that I'm providing in the resource section is I'm providing a more expansive list of foods that are very dense in folate. So if you're like, well, what food should I be eating? This is the short list. I have a much longer list that'll be in the resources, so that you will know with certainty that you are able to go and get the foods into your diet that are nutrient dense. What you'll notice is that there's going to be a lot of high value foods, a lot of commonalities across, so that if you really stack your diet loaded with certain types of foods, you are more than likely going to balance your diet quite well, leading to a state of optimal health expression. Now, let's move on here into this next section. So methylfolate is a different form of folate for people that have the MTFHR polymorphism. Methylfolate is what's called a reduced form of folate, and it's more beneficial to taking folic acid, because if you have the gene polymorphism, you really won't be able to process folate at all. The best sources, again, are things like your greens and, of course, whole food supplements. And you see on there, you've got your kale, you've got spinach, you've got collard greens, you've got lentil, broccoli. Greens tend to be extremely, extremely dense in methylfolate. So if you are someone who puts a lot of greens into your diet, it's not going to be hard for you to get plenty of this. So keeping that in mind, just make sure that your diet is really loaded in these, and try to have multiple servings of it per day. One great thing about this is, methylfolate and folate in general is water soluble. So you really don't have to worry about getting too much of it. So if you have a diet where you eat tons of greens, go for it. It's not going to harm you. There's very little risk in getting too much folate, because it is water soluble. So your body will urinate out anything greater than what your body does need. Okay. So hope this was helpful. Again, look in the resource section. You will find a more expansive list of the foods that are the best overall sources of folate and methylfolate. Just keep in mind, regardless of if you have, the ability to process folic acid normally, or if you need methylfolate, notice the commonalities: greens, 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 and more greens. All right. I will see you in the next module. Have a great day, guys. Be elite.